Today was Masters Day, and as some contemplated what the future holds, competitors ranged upwards from 30 years of age. Newcastle's Dixon Park Club had a strong showing, with two of the club's golden oldies the day's standouts, winning 7 gold, 3 silver and 1 bronze between them. But with the day's tally complete, it was Queenscliff from Sydney's Northern Beaches who finished on top, defending the New South Wales Masters title, despite early concerns from the club president.
We're winning from the Sydney contingent, but we've got Dixon Park in front of us at the moment, but we're hoping to catch them back with some of the late events.
Today's events range from sand sprints to tube and swim events, well represented by the state surf clubs with distance no hurdle.
We're from all over New South Wales, certainly a strong contingent from Sydney, but as far down as Mollymook and as far north as the Tweed, so we've covered all of New South Wales.
And what's a Masters turnout without the odd beverage at the end of the day?
Well, we're certainly having a few of those, but as you can see, there's a high level of competition and a high level of fitness of the lads, so some of them will be doubling up in the weekend, particularly some of the boaties will be in the reserve grade boats.
The titles continue tomorrow with the under 16, 19 and open events. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
It's not every day you get to meet a surfing legend and take in some board riding history, but that's exactly what students from St Francis Xavier did this morning. The teenagers who take surfing for sport were among the first to peruse Newcastle Museum's latest addition to its sporting gallery, a display featuring boards from as far back as the 1920s. And while a personal favourite of Mark Richards takes pride of place, it was a relative monster from the 60s that gave the 4-time world champ a thrill today.
I actually started surfing on a Gordon Wood surfboard, and Ken, who owns it, said the board's about 45 years old, so it's basically about the same age as me.
Meantime, memorabilia of a different kind has helped Tony Mowbray's quest to raise funds for premature babies at John Hunter Hospital reach around $40,000. Altatech Hydraulics at Hexham paid $12,500 for this Knight's autographed motorbike at an auction on Saturday night. They're now challenging other engineering businesses to also get aboard Tony's cause. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
We need the game, which is going to be the main benefit that we're going for. I also think it'll be good just to get the boys together.
Delinquent dogs can test even the most loyal canine lover. Enter John Richardson, aka the Dog Whisperer, and author of the book bearing the same name.
I would say anything up to about 70% of dogs are stressed, and they're stressed because of the way we're communicating with them.
He says a neurotic pet is often a destructive pet caused by loneliness and a lack of leadership. Such dogs are routinely handed over to animal shelters. Even those which are sold often wind up back behind bars due to bad behaviour. But the Dog Whisperer has a plan. It starts in Newcastle. Every week, his trainers Russell and Judy Mullins will train £1 pet of the week for free. They're pupils of the Ways of the Whisperer, who in the Canine Fanatics Bible, the magazine Dog's Life, shares monthly tips.
If your dog jumps up on you and you put your hands on the dog, you're really condoning that behaviour. What you should do is ignore it. If somebody is trying to get your attention and you ignore them, guess what? They'll stop doing that.
It's hoped this scheme will be extended elsewhere, giving man's best friend a new leash on life. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
It was hardly Big Wednesday at Surfest, but if anyone was going to get the most of today's small waves, it was a board rider nicknamed Micro. Wearing his trademark green pants, the Central Coast Glenn Hall progressed through 2 heats, ousting Pro Junior winner and local hope Travis Lynch along the way. While the Novocastrian found himself in a washing machine at times, Mulloway's Sean Cansdell made the most of a bad situation to advance, as did fellow Mid-North Coaster Michael Caine. For a surfer from the home of big waves, Hawaii's Sean Moody looked right at home in the small swell. American Gavin Beshan also progressed, showing no ill effects of a nasty accident during some free surfing at the weekend. While Stockton's Lucas Gresham bowed out, it wasn't all bad news for the Hunter contingent, with Catherine Hill Bay's Paul Parks winning his heat, as did fellow Catho rider Dan Frodsham, who still managed to smile despite the tough conditions. While Mitchell Ross and Jared Morrell couldn't do the same, having been eliminated in their heats, Ty Arnold was no doubt wearing the biggest grin of the day, the Central Coast surfer catching one of the few tubes on offer. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
The Sharks' Preston Campbell finally gets a reprieve from the hooking role this week. He didn't move to the number 7 jumper he's been looking for, but he got a start on the wing where he's much more suited. He's been very unsettled at hooker. His form has only been average and he hasn't been getting much game time either. I think getting the most out of him is instrumental for the Sharks' success, and Chris Anderson will realise that as the year goes on. To the try of the week, and I thought this was an outstanding 100-metre try by the Warriors. From the kick-off, the big fella, Mark Tukey, makes a 50-metre break, basically untouched. He eventually tips it on to Ivan Cleary, then to Clinton Tupy, who scores. That try was typical of the Cowboys' defence last week, which was just really disappointing. I thought this was the best tackle of the week. It goes to John Hopewadi, who, as you can see, is still hurting people with his stinging defence, but this time it's legal. OK, the big game tonight on the lights at Aussie Stadium will be tough. Forget the suspensions and the injury toll. The Roosters will have a siege mentality and will lift. Coach Ricky Stewart will have whatever players he's got left ready to put their bodies on the line. I'm tipping a physical match, but the Knights to win, of course. 2 other matches, and I'm tipping an upset win by the Storm over the Bulldogs. Rabbitohs, Broncos, Warriors, Sharks and Eels to win their games. Good luck with your tips. I'll see you next week. Back to you.
Danny Smith is one of at least 1,000 home builders in the Hunter who've been abandoned by insurer Dexter Corporation. After the HIH collapse, he fears it will spell the end for many small builders.
It's absolutely critical. The building industry works on the tightest of margins and everyone is working on a knife's edge.
Dexter Corporation is an underwriting agency covering builders for cases such as defective workmanship. Yesterday it announced it will no longer offer such cover, but unlike HIH, it will honour existing policies. However, the big concern is, with only Royal and Sun Alliance left as a major insurer, premiums and house prices will soar.
The HIA believes strongly at this point of time that there's no need for anyone to panic. The building industry is in a boom period up here in the Hunter region, and people should stay calm.
The HIA says a state government restructure of home warranty insurance will encourage a flood of insurers into the market. But that's strongly refuted by the Master Builders Association, which is affiliated with Dexter. It says it's that very restructure that caused Dexter to pull out of the industry because there'll be less builders requiring underwriting cover.
You couldn't have asked for better weather, but again, there was barely a ripple on the water. Organisers actually delayed the start of today's action until late morning, so as the tide went out, the surfers went in. Todd Prestige made the most of what was on offer, scoring a rare 8.5 ride to take out his heat in the round of 96. Michael Caine has been in blistering form all week. Whether it be big or small surf, the Port Macquarie board rider has looked right at home at Newcastle. Paul Park should. A hometown boy, his surfing smarts gave him the edge today. He took the extra time allotted in the heats to pick and choose his rides. The plan worked, moving through to the round of 64, but still a long way from becoming the first local to win the MR Pro.
Jumping the gun a bit there, mate. There's still another 64 guys in it, but I'd love to be it, yeah. That'd be great.
The world's best hit the water tomorrow, and everyone hopes they have something to work with.
Hopefully by the weekend we'll get some waves and I'll get to surf with the rest of the world champs.
And while the action on the water was disappointing, the nearby skate park was well and truly alive. A $6,500 event will be skated out on Sunday with a number of top professional riders taking part. Meanwhile, overnight, Miss Surfest was crowned for 2002 with Carla Bainbridge earning the honour. In just her first large-scale competition, the 19-year-old Port Stephens local earns a trip to California and $1,000 spending money.
And yeah, there is some pressure down in Newcastle, but this, as I say, we hopefully won't feel it so much up here.
The deregulation of the dairy industry hit many communities hard, none more so than Dungog. But a new business, which is hoped will stimulate the local building industry, was opened with some help from the Dairy Regional Assistance Program.
It's not only dairy farmers that are affected, it's also other small businesses in the town, people that relied on dairy farmers, the income from dairy farmers, feed merchants, all sorts of people that relied on dairy farmers for their income.
Dungog ready-mix concrete was the idea of Jim Norris and Kate Murphy, who noticed a market for concrete in Dungog back in 1995. With a $100,000 kickstart from the Dairy RAP initiative, their dream is now a reality.
And this, being a concrete factory, can be the start of a whole lot of development going on in the area.
It encourages people with ideas, local people with ideas who are aware of what's needed in their community, to get out there and do something that's going to get employment going and stimulate the economy again and get things moving again.
The concrete plant will initially employ 2 full-time staff and 1 part-timer, with plans to expand. But more importantly, it will allow builders to buy their concrete locally and better guarantee the product will arrive on site before it goes off. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Edgeworth wasted no time beginning their season campaign, a goal from former United striker Peter Jenkowicz giving them some early confidence. Clever passing saw Edgeworth back in Rosebud territory, only to be stopped by desperate defence. Keeping the pressure on, a Mick Williams shot at goal seemed too good to be true. And it was, a touch judge ruling offside. Minutes later, Williams followed through with what would be the decider. To the water, and hundreds of competitors travelled by boat across Lake Macquarie this morning to take the plunge for the annual swim across the lake. The 3.8 kilometre event begins at Coal Point, with swimmers reaching land at the Belmont 16-footers. The first of the men out of the water was Matthew Gray in just over 45 minutes, and the first woman to finish was Amy Wild in a time of 48 minutes and 7 seconds. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
With mines at Catherine Hill Bay due to close in the coming months, the Wallara will soon be sold. But because the coal will have to be transported by road to the Carrington coal loader, there's now a push by state representatives and Newcastle Council to keep the Wallara operating.
Even if it operates every second day, it'd be something that could be looked at. There may be means of operating it in a more cheaper way than it's operating now.
The president of the Carrington Residents Action Group describes trucking the coal through the streets of Newcastle as a step backwards.
It comes down, I think, to people bean counting instead of taking into the social costs. 80-odd trucks on the road could mean a lot of things, could mean extra deaths.
But if the Wallara can't continue, Lord Mayor John Tate says it needs to be established just how many trucks there'll be on the roads and what route they'll take. Several meetings involving council and management of the coal mine will be held early next week. Lake Coal and coal operations were unavailable for comment today. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The boys from Raymond Terrace showed their soft side today, donating round two's gate takings to the Cancer Council's Nurse in a Million campaign. The Magpies raced to an early lead, up 10-0 in just 10 minutes, thanks to an Adrian Bolton try. Solid hit-ups from Magpies forwards led by Scott Coxon saw the Terrace spend valuable time in Blues territory, but forced errors ended up missed opportunities. A determined Northern Blues side found itself back on the halfway mark soon after, ruffling Magpie feathers in the process. With some order back on the paddock, former knight Brett Grogan showed why he spent time playing grade, his defence faultless. Good lead-up play from the Blues saw Craig Wise cross, followed by a conversion to put the first of their points on the board. Ahead of tomorrow's Legends event, past world champions spent time signing autographs this afternoon for hundreds of admirers. In today's events, Port Macquarie's Michael Cain's great week came to an end, drawing his heat against Mark Occhilupo, Damien Hardman and Mark Bannister. Poor conditions proved disappointing. Occhi even tried some new tactics to grab the judges' attention. and it must have had some effect, finishing first in his heat, closely followed by Bannister, pleased with his result.
Well, as long as you're progressing, yeah, definitely. Like I said, I had a 2-point ride as my third scoring wave with 10 minutes to go, and I didn't get to better it.
And with conditions making it hard for surfers to reach high scores, Ockie's not phased.
Last week at Bells we're getting 9.5s and stuff. It's a struggle. I mean, everyone's in the same boat.
Other standouts in today's heats were CJ Hopgood, Luke Egan and last year's winner Mick Campbell. Disappointment though for Catherine Hill surfer Paul Parks, his run coming to an end this afternoon. And ahead of tomorrow's finals, the pros are remaining cautious as they head into their heats.
The little guys, Mick Fanning, Chris Davo, I know there's some of the big guys can get going as well, as long as they have the right waves, but there's too many guys, 30-odd guys can win this.
There's a few young kids I've been watching that are ripping, so I'm crossing my fingers that tomorrow's going to be 3 foot. So.
Stephen Mount, NBN News. The final day of Surfest, and an event of a different kind was happening well beyond the break. A water spout capturing the eyes of spectators before heavy rain arrived just before the semi-finals. Today's disappointments included Mark Occhilupo and Luke Egan, both unable to progress past their final heats. Reigning world champ CJ Hopgood joined Aussie Mick Fanning, Brazilian Victor Ribas and fellow American Tim Rays in the second semi, but that was to be his last appearance in the Mark Richards Pro. Ribas went searching for ways to make the final. His performance enough for second place and a berth in the final. But it was Tweed head surfer Mick Fanning's day. Tipped as the favourite early in the tournament, Fanning didn't disappoint. With the crowd right behind them, he gave them plenty to cheer about. That performance enough to put him well ahead of the field and take out the event.
Oh, I'm stoked. Yeah, I'm just so stoked. Just stoked to be an Aussie. It's just incredible. Everyone that does the whole tour always comes to these events in Australia, and they're always so hard, and it's trying conditions out here, but I'm just so rapt to actually get another one to take home.
To wrap up the tournament, spectators were treated to an hour-long expression session by 12 former world champions, including the event's proud namesake. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Some familiar faces in the crowd that looked on at United training today, including many who know what winning premierships is all about. It's hard for the soccer side not to think ahead as well.
It was fabulous at what the Knights achieved last year. I'd like to think that if we can achieve something similar to that.
But first things first, and that starts with the opening leg of the semi-final series against Perth this weekend, a trip two players may well miss with injury. Both Alex Moriera and Daniel Beltrame have knee problems and are still to convince their coach they're fit.
They're the ones that know, they're the ones that have feel the pain, and that there's one or two bits that I've seen that I can tell both of them are feeling their knees slightly, but they've got to be the ones at the end of the day that decide whether they think they're right.
Neither played on Saturday night in Coffs Harbour with Brad Swancott guarding goal. He was rarely tested in a match Newcastle easily won 14-0, but it provided as much off the field as it did on, with the team able to get away from the ever-growing scrutiny of the coming semi-final matches. That's sure to only intensify during the week. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The sight of workers dismantling Surfest headquarters signalled the end of the event for 2002. Local surfers finally had a chance to reclaim their favourite break after it was borrowed by the sports elite for 12 days. And according to the pros, Newcastle is now home to the premier competition in the world.
We mightn't have the best surf, but we can definitely produce good surf. But as in the organisation, the administration, the presentation of the event, we're now rated the best event in the world, so we're eclipsing the US Open and the Gunston, which is another tick-off for Newcastle.
Among the highlights of the festival, kids from the state's west hitting the ocean for the first time, the Indigenous Classic, the water spout before yesterday's final, and Mick Fanning's popular win in the Mark Richards Pro.
To win the event, I think, is what Mick Fanning and a lot of the international have shown. The money and the points don't mean anything. The way he held that trophy above his head was a magic moment for him.
But there's little rest for the weary. Organisers are already planning to make Surfest 2003 even bigger and better than this year's event. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Adam McDougall can't believe his luck. After 4 months of rehabilitation from groin surgery, it took just 9 minutes to turn into major knee trouble. Scans revealed he has damaged the all-important cruciate ligament. Just how bad will be clear tomorrow. There is an outside chance he could return in 2 months, but the real fear is a reconstruction and sitting out the season.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to swallow at the moment, particularly, after, as I said, just playing 9 minutes of football. I don't know if I can overcome the emotional side of it.
Those emotions have already got him thinking about giving the game away if he's faced with the worst.
I feel that I've been robbed of probably the best year of my life as far as where I'm at with football. I felt that this year I was sort of 27 and I was going to be at the peak of my powers.
Bad news today too for Clinton O'Brien. He'll miss up to a month of football with a kidney tear. The prop copped the injury while scoring during Friday night's win against the Roosters and will take at least 3 weeks to recover. A number of players have niggles from the match, including Danny Medeiros, who actually found himself on the wing at one stage, suffering blurred vision. He's had trouble though all season seeing former teammate Matthew Johns in a Sharks jumper. He'll get to see it for real this Friday night.
I don't know if that suits him, the Cronulla jersey, but he'll be really looking forward to getting back here, I'd say.
The clash between the famous Johns brothers is set to dominate pre-match talk all week. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Margaret Gall's bludgeoned body was found by a male flatmate in this Adelaide Street home on March 25. The mother of four had suffered severe head injuries. Now police have managed to narrow down the time of her death to a 90-minute period on that day.
Margaret was last seen alive at about 1:50 p.m. on Monday the 25th of March this year. Between then and at a time when a number of telephone calls were made to the premises, starting at shortly after 3:20 p.m. A number of those calls were not answered, so we're assuming that between that time, between 1:50 and 3:20 p.m, the offences occurred.
Police also believe nothing was stolen from Mrs. Gall's house, and she may have even known her killer.
The crime scene tends to indicate that there has been no forced entry and that entry may have been gained through an open doorway.
Over the past 3 weeks, detectives have scoured the neighbourhood looking for clues to the brutal killing.
To date, there's been over 300 people spoken to, a large amount of information and a large number of avenues of investigation have been identified.
Police and Mrs. Gall's family have renewed their plea for information about the attack. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. A loving husband and father, the memory of 30-year-old Patrick Wallace has been laid in stone. A plaque at Stockton marking the point of which he was killed during a fishing trip with 2 friends in Newcastle Harbour on the 28th of July 2000. The bricklayer's widow at Newcastle District Court today for the trial of a skipper charged over his death. David Alexander Jack of Hamilton pleaded not guilty to dangerously navigating this 8-metre catamaran. A maritime pilot with the Newcastle Port Corporation, his vessel ran over this 4-metre tinny carrying the 3 men soon after 9:30 p.m. One of them, Gary Pevitt, suffered serious injuries in the accident. Crown Prosecutor David Brack told the court the allegation is that David Jack was driving too fast and not looking out, something denied by his defence barrister Bob Greenhill. The trial hinges on whether or not the fishermen had their boat lights turned on or off before the tragic accident. The defence claims they were off and the boat cloaked in darkness, but the first of 2 crash survivors to give evidence today maintains they were on. Tinny driver Darren Sorrent said a few seconds after seeing the vessel he remembered water gushing across his face and he couldn't work out if he was up or down. The accused immediately tried to help, but Patrick Wallace couldn't be revived. The trial continues. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
To watch Eliza Stankovic power her way around the track, it's hard to believe the 20-year-old has only been racing for just 11 months. But the talented student is a quick learner, earning a spot in the Australian team for Manchester.
It's happened so quickly, quicker than I ever would have thought.
4 years ago, she didn't know what to think. Meningococcal bacteria took both her legs below the knee and attacked her hands, but not her spirit. She'll be showing off that in the green and gold late in July.
Really cliche, but representing your country is a pretty amazing thing. And
joining her will be the Australian high jump champion Nick Moroney and hurdles title holder Jackie Munro, who successfully defended her crown in Brisbane.
This will be my first senior national team, and that is just amazing. I'm so excited to be on this team and just can't wait to get out there and run.
29-year-old Moroney has tasted World Cup and Goodwill Games action, but after the disappointment of missing Sydney 2000, his relief today is quickly being replaced by a desire to perform.
I was happy to win the Nationals, but still that feeling of being unsatisfied, so there's definitely a lot more there to come, so hopefully it'll come in Manchester.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It's a long way from the carefree life that most teenagers lead. Aside from his schoolwork, Daniel Rees also has the responsibility of taking care of his sick mother. Both admit it's an enormous task.
I'd hang out washing if she's got any, go up the street and get the shopping.
Basically, Daniel does everything, right from the time he walks in the door until he goes to bed at night.
Mrs. Rees has sensory neuropathy. It affects the central nervous system and is terminal. While she receives 2.5 hours of home care support each week, the rest is up to Daniel, who's in just his second year of high school.
I'm not really sure how I do it. It's pretty hard though.
His mother is well aware that her son has been forced to grow up too quickly.
He hasn't been able to be a child. We live straight across from the pool and he's hardly been over there because he doesn't even want to leave me just to go across the road.
But Daniel and his mother aren't alone. Across Australia, there's almost 19,000 young people who are primary carers for either their mum or dad. Carers New South Wales has established an assistance line which provides support for young carers. People can also ring to become a carer. The number is 1800 242 636. The Rees family hopes the state government will invest more money in carers to provide better support to families like their own.
I need someone to help my son to take a lot of the pressure off him so he can concentrate more at school.
I hope that she does get some more help because she really needs it.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News. It's not often these days that you come across someone who can recite poetry, let alone a bloke who can belt out a few stanzas of his own work based on a unique experience in the Australian bush. But that's what Greg Scott does best and has now been named the ASMA New South Wales Bush Poet of the Year for his poem Mulligan's Mob.
It's just a funny story about an old fella that marries this young wife and they think they're having one child and they finish up having 4.
The humorous poem has had a strong reaction across the country, even in the big smoke when it hit the Sydney airwaves. And here is why.
At the sight of 4 babies all squealing and damp, lined up at the foot of the bed, old Mulligan turned and blew out the lamp, as if something had snapped in his head. And then from the darkness his terrified roar, as the wife gave a final contraction. I got 4 on the floor, I don't want any more, and it must be the light that attracts them.
The farmer from Moon Flat near Scone says bush poetry is poetry of the people. While it's not popular culture, Greg says it's something with which all Australians can identify.
I think people are sick to death of imported entertainment. I think, you know, they want to get back to their roots.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Newcastle United got their first look at the impressive Subiaco Oval last night for their last training session before the match. Tonight, it'll be packed with 40,000 Glory fans.
Very impressive, and it'll be great to see it full tomorrow night for the game.
Newcastle skipper came close to signing with Perth 3 years ago, but wouldn't swap his current side for anything.
We're never out of the game, and I think most teams this year have found that out. So. Tomorrow night we'll be looking to do the same things that we've done all year.
A massive blow late in the session with Middleby tearing a hamstring, ruling him out. It left Crook with a sleepless night deciding what to do, and late today he still hadn't decided. However, it's understood he's leaning towards starting Travis Dodd with Daniel McBreen coming onto the bench. The only problem at the Perth camp was who to leave out. The Glory boast the best attack in the competition and believe on their night, even the best defence can't stop them.
If we're at our best, we'll win the game.
United believe season form counts for nothing in the semis.
You can finish 30, 40 points in front, but at the end of it, we're both sitting here now with no points.
The match kicks off at 9 o'clock tonight, our time. Curry began well enough, 5'8" Corey Brown doing it on his own to open up the scoring. Rugby League journeyman Leo Denver looks classy no matter what jumper he's wearing, and the New South signing handled twice before sending Bevan Ezri over the line to draw level. Halfback Ty Fallon snuck over for one as well. While a third try finished a 10-minute point-scoring spree that opened up a 16 4-point lead for the Lions as the Bulldogs faced a tough battle. A fight back after the break saw them narrow the gap, but South got the money by 4. Horizons is certainly building a strong stable of stars, with Nadina Taylor joining Cherie Burns as the golf resort's second touring professional. The 23-year-old couldn't be happier, accepting both the ALPG Rookies Trophy and now financial backing and training support for her first assault on Europe.
I mean, most of the girls that they don't have hardly any sponsorship. Their parents have given them money, or they've taken out a loan, or they've borrowed it from a few members from the golf club. But to actually have someone backing like this, it's just unbelievable.
Taylor certainly has all the hallmarks of a future champion. A former #1 Australian amateur, she won a European touring card at her first attempt.
I'm just going to go out there with a pretty open mind and just play my best golf and see what happens.
Heading into her second year on the pro circuit, Cherie Burns is much the wiser after a tough initiation.
Just want to make top 10 in every event. And the British Open's in August, so if I can remain in the top 35 on the order of merit, I'll get an exemption straight into that.
Both leave on Friday to prepare for the opening event in the Canary Islands, with a hectic 2.5-month schedule taking them to the UK, Italy, Portugal and Spain, with some US events also pencilled in.
Hobbling but recovering well, Senior Constable David Dean has been inundated with well wishes and cards, even one from someone he locked up.
The phone just doesn't stop ringing.
The 38-year-old Highway Patrol officer had been pursuing an allegedly stolen car on Friday night at Neath. According to police facts tendered in court, the alleged car thief lost control of the vehicle and it stopped. The senior constable then ran to the car and had been reaching in to grab the accused when it's alleged he took off, dragging the police officer a short distance. He was flung into the air and airlifted to hospital amid initial fears he'd suffered spinal injuries.
The first face I saw I knew was the boss, was Terry Collins. It was very heartening to see him so far up the ladder come to see somebody like me.
The alleged driver, Christopher Dawson, is facing various charges, including assaulting a police officer. His brother Glenn, who police allege was his passenger, has also been charged. Both their cases have been adjourned until next month. It's been a fortnight marred by tragedy for the New South Wales Police Service. Only hours before David's ordeal, he had attended the funeral of fellow officer Chris Thornton. A man has been charged over his death, which happened during a police chase. Earlier this month, Senior Constable Glenn McAnally was shot dead in his patrol car in Sydney. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
These cardboard cutouts are far from the real thing. They don't move or moo, but they're a critical part of a trial conducted by New South Wales Agriculture. Entomologists are using them to attract one of the state's most wanted insects, the ever-elusive biting midge. The blood-feeding insect can spread diseases such as Akabani, which results in deformities in newborn calves.
The virus is secreted in its saliva, and it can spread the virus from one cow to another.
Each cardboard beast is shaped like the real animal. Some are carrying carbon dioxide, others different coloured lights, while some are adorned with cow odour. But so far they haven't been able to fool the midges.
We've just got to find something that really triggers them.
It seems the cardboard versions don't attract the numbers of midges like real cattle.
So obviously at this point in time we're missing some characteristic that is true for mosquitoes, but it's not true for this particular insect.
If the trial can discover ways to prevent the midges coming into contact with the cattle, it would enable stock to be transported live from New South Wales ports overseas. It means big dollars in the case of countries such as China, which has an estimated export trade of $10 million each year. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
Fishermen made the gruesome discovery of human remains inside the tiger shark on Sunday night. Today, forensic dentists put the pieces of the puzzle back together, revealing the remains belong to 52-year-old Kang Suk Lee, a welder from Sydney. Mr. Lee was washed off rocks at Honeycomb Point near Port Kembla on the state's south coast on April 2nd.
The indications as of yesterday was that the body was outside of the shark longer than what it was inside, which would indicate that the type of death would be by drowning.
The grisly catch sparked a massive search by police of unsolved homicide and missing persons records.
We had a lot of families ring up from northern Queensland, the Gold Coast. We've had inquiries from Customs in Victoria, Western Australia, New Zealand and Canada.
The family of Mr. Lee are said to be relieved they will finally be able to bury him.
I spoke to them briefly this morning. They're fairly upset, obviously, and hope to have some follow-up with them later on next week.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. Currently in Australia, around 4% of women suffer from gestational diabetes, diabetes that only develops once a woman falls pregnant. But opinion is still divided as to what blood sugar levels are harmful to mother and baby in this often symptomless condition.
There is no consensus. The Americans have one set of definitions, the Europeans have another, and Australia has somewhat in between.
Now, a new international study is hoping to develop a set of standards for testing and diagnosing this disease,
so that we can get agreement on what level of the glucose tolerance test is actually abnormal, and then we can look at the best way to treat it.
John Hunter Hospital is just one of the centres taking part in the study, and today Dr Jeremy Oates, Australasian Director of the study, visited the team to discuss the progress of the trial. Locally, some 1,500 women will be blood tested and their glucose levels recorded. Newborn babies will also be tested and measured.
Worldwide, it's 25,000 that will be recruited, so that this is a study that's powerful enough to give good evidence so that we can know exactly how we should be dealing with this group of patients.
If untreated, the condition can cause babies to develop diabetes in later life. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Novocastrians also turned out in force for other Anzac services in the city suburbs. A couple of hundred people crowded around the cenotaph at Adamstown, where veterans from different wars remembered their fallen friends. A large number of children were also paying their respects on Australia's most sacred day. And that proved to be the theme around the country. In Swansea, children marched in place of family, and as one speaker said, it made his heart fill with pride to see young people honouring veterans. And then a moving moment in front of Swansea's new memorial. Only the sound of a soul bugle could be heard as everyone thought about those who had made the supreme sacrifice. Meantime, the men and women serving on the HMAS Newcastle also held their own service.
People have spent some time just reflecting on the importance and the relevance of it to the individuals themselves, trying to reflect the times with their families and the sacrifice that they are actually making for Australia.
The guided missile frigate is currently patrolling the Persian Gulf as part of the international coalition against terrorism. One of its main roles while on duty is to make sure oil isn't smuggled out of Iraq. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
In the past few weeks, you'd think Mark Hughes was playing with a bounty on his head. The centre fell by a second high shot in as many weeks, but it's in representative football. He wants his name marked.
There's a lot of good fullbacks running around, and I hope that they consider me, because last year I felt I'd done a good job for them and I can improve on what I did last year.
A bolter for the Blues custodian role last year, it's unsure what selectors are thinking this season. The country origin team may well indicate what they'll do, and it's selected on Sunday night.
Yeah, I guess if they're thinking of me as a possible fullback, I suppose I might be selected a fullback in the country team.
Several Knights are destined to be in that side, but Steve Simpson's immediate future isn't clear. The second rower cited for this hit on Friday night. It's similar to a tackle made by Brisbane forward Petro Civoniceva a week earlier. It cost him a 1-week suspension. Meanwhile, Ben Kennedy is recovering in a Newcastle hospital tonight after a minor medical procedure today to repair an infected foot. He's considered a good chance of playing this weekend. However, Robbie O'Davis will know more about his injured foot later tonight. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The Defence Force Warfare Centre at Williamtown is home to Australia's specialists on peacekeeping. In just a decade, the small unit has established an international reputation for preparing our troops and federal police to restore law and order in global hotspots. There are currently 15 United Nations peacekeeping missions underway, and this International Peace Operations Seminar is seen as a vital information exchange.
We know how they work, they know how we work, and at the end of the day we can get a much better, smoother process in the field.
The fortnight-long gathering began in Canberra last week and will use the Williamtown sittings to discuss operational aspects of peacekeeping. The seminar has drawn together representatives from 21 nations. They include representatives from countries already involved in peacekeeping and those keen to take their place on the world stage.
And so they've sent their delegates out here to learn how we train and what we train, so they can go back home and hopefully start up some sort of training for their own nations.
Among those at the seminar building bridges for the future is the United States. The US is currently only a minor contributor to peacekeeping missions. Gary Blair, NBN News.
While many of the young fans at this morning's Breakfast with the Stars in Wagga no doubt dream of wearing a country jersey, it's one of a sky blue colour preoccupying Matt Parsons and Josh Perry. The young front rower well aware of what a suspended Jason Riles could mean.
He was always going to be a definite in the State of Origin, and if he's not playing, we're definitely got a better chance.
His partner in the forwards, though, tells a slightly different story.
Yeah, we're not really worried about how Jason gets on. That's his department. We're just worried about playing Friday night, and there's another 2 spots up for grabs anyway. So
Parsons and his fellow country reps were put through a couple of light training sessions today. Coach Brian Smith happy with how the team's coming together. And why wouldn't he be? Practically all the players have worn the same coloured jersey at one stage or another.
As you know, there's a lot of Newcastle blokes and blokes that were with Newcastle aren't anymore, so everyone knows everyone pretty well, so it's a good feeling amongst the group.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.